Before a student ever takes their first lesson with me, there's something I require of them. If they don't do this, they can't be a part of my studio. Making this one change has made teaching lessons so much more fun and has totally upped the quality of the culture in my private lesson studio. Think about your private lesson studio like it's a playground. Inside this playground, we have a good time, we play music, and we learn and we grow as people. This playground has a fence around it, and that fence allows us to have influence on what goes on inside and also allows us to have confidence about what's going on inside. But you take away that fence and we lose a lot of that influence on what's going on inside that playground, and it makes it harder to have confidence about what's going on inside that playground. That's what it's like inside your private lesson studio. And if there's no fence around your private lesson studio, you don't have influence and you don't have confidence. And when I realized this is when I made a huge change. And that huge change was establishing a lesson policy, a written lesson policy that every student and their parent must agree to before they even see me for their first lesson. That lesson policy talks about a lot of things that I'll talk about in the future on this channel. But the main thing I want to focus on today is the biggest thing, and that's my policy of ending lessons early. Without a doubt, the number one complaint that I get from my fellow private lessons teachers is that their students don't practice enough. Every time I hear a fellow teacher say this, I always wonder in the back of my head, I don't necessarily say this out loud, but in the back of my head, I wonder, what have you done about this lack of practicing situation in your private studio? It's like a playground designer who comes to a playground that they've designed and they look around and they see trash everywhere. And they start complaining about the patrons, about how the patrons should know better and they're leaving trash everywhere. But little do they realize that there are no trash cans in this playground that they themselves designed. The designer can complain about the patrons all they want, but the truth is the playground is only being used according to its design, or in this case, its lack of design. The same thing is true for your private lesson studio. If you're having trouble with your students practicing, the reason why is not the kids. The reason why is the designer of the private lesson studio. Your studio is only being used according to its design. When I came to this realization myself, this is when I established the 4 times rule in my lesson studio. And here's what the 4 times rule is. You got 4 times to not practice your stuff before I kick you out of the studio. Now, that sounds a little bit harsh, but there's a little bit more to it. And what it really is a 4-step progression that's designed to help my private lesson students get back on track with their practicing so that they can stay in my studio. Here's how it works. The first time a student shows up to their lesson unprepared, I sit down with them and their notebook and we draw out a picture of their week. And over the course of their week, we find the different time slots where they should be able to be doing the practicing that they need to do. After we go through that, we make an agreement that the next time I see them, they're going to follow through with this plan, and we're going to talk about how the plan went. And then after I teach them how to use their time better for their week, I end their lesson early and I send them home. The second time that this happens, things are a little bit different. The second time I point to the plan that we agreed upon and let them know that because they haven't done it, that I'm going to end their lesson early. And then I end their lesson early and I send them home. The third time this happens is a little bit different. Up until now, I haven't had any contact with the parents about how these lessons have been going, but this time I do. The third time that this happens, I point back to the agreement that we made on how they were going to be practicing. I let them know that because they haven't done that I'm going to end their lesson early. And then I end their lesson early, I send them home, but I walk out to the vehicle or to wherever their parents are sitting, or if their parents are in the room, I just walk up to them and I explain to them, hey, Jimmy has not been practicing for his lessons. This is actually the 3rd time in a row that he hasn't been coming prepared. And so because of that, I have to end his lesson early. And then I end their lesson early and I keep their money. Getting to the 4th time is pretty sad, but thankfully it's rare. If it ever gets to the point where 4 times in a row a student hasn't come prepared for their lesson, then I will go to their parent with the kid and I will say, hey, this is the 4th time in a row that Jimmy has been coming to his lessons unprepared. And because of that, I can no longer teach him. He can't be a part of my private lesson studio. And then I end the lesson early and I keep their money. In all 4 cases of ending the lesson early and keeping the money, I enforce my lesson policy. This is written out in the lesson policy. Everyone knows that this is what's going to happen. I have every right at any given time in any lesson to end the lesson early if I feel the student did not prepare appropriately for their lesson. As a matter of fact, let me show you the exact text of this policy right now. It reads like this, and you can feel free to pause the video and copy this and put it right into your lesson policy right now if you want. Let me share 3 advantages of this kind of policy. The first one, and the one that's most exciting, is you're going to enjoy teaching your private lessons so much more. This has made my private lesson studio so much more fun because my students show up ready to learn and I show up ready to teach. It's very rare that I need to show up to a lesson worried about, oh no, did Jimmy practice? Because the Jimmy who doesn't practice ain't in my studio. The second thing is that students start to kind of self-select. Because this is in the lesson policy, before they ever have their first lesson, they agree to the fact that if they don't practice for their stuff, that I'm going to end their lesson early and I'm going to keep their money. But additionally, the word kind of starts to get out about what kind of teacher I am. I'm the kind of teacher that expects you to practice. I'm not your entertainment music teacher. I'm not your music appreciation teacher, and I'm not your babysitter. You come to my studio and we learn about music. We have a good time, we laugh, we grow as people, but the vehicle for all of that is music and musical excellence, not musical mediocrity. And so the population of students that I've been teaching them for over 10 years now. And so the word has gotten out about what kind of teacher I am and what my expectations are. They tell each other, don't show up to a lesson with Paul if you haven't practiced, if you're unprepared, because nobody's going to have a good time. And so that adds to additional self-selection. Not only do they get it in the lesson policy, but before they even see the lesson policy, their friends have already told them about what it's like to study music with me. But the last thing, and easily the most important thing, is I'm teaching real life to these students when I enforce this policy. We both know that most of our students are not going to become professional musicians, but they are going to become important parts of society in some way. They're going to have a job, they might have a family, they're going to have people that are depending on them. And one of the lessons that this teaches them is your parents might put up with your mediocrity, but the rest of the world won't. And kids need to learn those kinds of lessons. And so by teaching them this lesson, whether it's they make it to step 1 only or up to step 3 or even all the way up to step 4, I can trust that I'm teaching an important lesson to those kids. And it's a lesson that they will take with them the rest of their lives. And that's what I'm about. Knowing how few of my students are going to become professional musicians, I want them to take something from private lessons with me home with them that's going to last with them for the rest of their lives. And I've had students say that very thing, that they learned this kind of attitude and behavior and level of work ethic from taking lessons with me. That right there, that's what I'm about. I'm about that. If you're considering private lessons as a part of your music career, I highly recommend it. It's been a huge blessing to my life. But also I have linked in the description below a list that I've created of other music opportunities for making money that don't involve playing gigs at night. If you want to check those out, check out that list below. Bye y'all, blessings.